Greetings, Saberites. Nonymous here. So I wanted to take a little bit of time here during our thoughtful period that the world is taking now to address something that I think is kind of an elephant in the room a lot of times, and is something that especially with people I encounter over here and other places that brings up some confusion and stuff like this. And this has to do with the ASL-FFE rule set and the use of priority and arming, really, because these two things are kind of connected. I know a lot of people who encounter the rule set have a problem with priority, and I'll explain what that is here in just a second. And there are, complaints about it and criticisms and all of that kind of thing. And the arming principle and the priority principle in the ASL rule set for lightsaber is there for a very specific reason. And I'll go into that, what that is as well. Now, a little background for me: I'm not coming from a system or a art that uses priority. I'm coming from traditional Chinese martial arts. We do a system called Duan Bing, short weapon, which is a very intuitive manner of fencing. We're trying to get it solidified as much as we can, like we did with the lightsaber, so that it can become a more practiced sport. But regardless, it is what most people will encounter out there. A kind of first come, first serve, first person to get hit loses the point. Often you either don't count doubles, or it's just you ignore them. That kind of thing. So I'm from that background, where it's basically just pick up a weapon, try and hit the other guy. You don't have to think about all of these processes while you're in competition, in play. So coming to the ASL rule set that our Knight Cedric developed with the help of the FFE and with the blessing of the FFE. When using this set, and there's some getting used to when you're dealing with priority. I am aware of what priority kind of feels like, because the major issue that a lot of people see, of all levels, from beginners to experts with priority, is the whole thing with spinning. So let's talk about what exactly priority is. In the ASL rule set, priority means that when I arm a strike, which means in engagement arming, I have brought my entire weapon behind my spine. I'll just use this here. I engagement arm all the way back like this and come forward. When I come back to here, I have priority, meaning the opponent is now obligated to defend from my attack. They cannot counter strike. They cannot hit me while I am in process, all of that kind of thing. So as I'm taking my arm behind my back here, a lot of people say, well, that leaves you completely open. Well, in the rule set, we don't have to worry about that, because once we're behind there, we have priority. They can't attack us yet. Now, this goes with, being open or spinning. So if I spin around, as soon as my weapon kind of goes away from my opponent past my center line, right, and this is all in relation to the opponent, right, I again have priority. They have to allow me to continue to finish my spin and either dodge or parry the attack that I'm delivering. So that's the rule. Now, the fact that you cannot just snipe a guy as he is spinning around is the point of having the priority and of having the arming, right? So the arming principle allows us to show, to telegraph a bit of what we are planning to do, right? The priority rule dictates that we have to be aware that there are turns that are being taken here, and that we have to know where that is, and we can only attack in turn. We can only do certain things in turn. Now, dodging and parrying are responses to attacks. So I can just dodge it, or I can parry it and try to do something with it. Okay, so the whole reason why these two things are playing together and why we're specifically using them in lightsaber is to create a spectacle, is to allow fighters to spin, to do things that you would, and I say this all the time in workshops and stuff like that. Feel free to do things that you would never in a million years attempt in a real fight. Spinning around, jumping, doing a tornado kick, doing, you know, all of these things now these skills are kind of useful. Doing a tornado kick, doing a butterfly kick, these are ways that you can arm and cover a lot of distance and be very, very flashy about it. And if your opponent isn't used to seeing somebody do that in front of them, then there is a good chance that you will create an opportunity for yourself. And they won't know where that strike is going to come from, and you can essentially just reach out and touch them. It's happened, a lot in our experiments with all of this stuff. So that's the reason why the rule set is there, is because we want to like hype this up, to get more flashy moves, to do that. So ironically, and this is, I'll talk about this in a little bit too later in just a second, because ironically this limitation, you cannot counterattack, you have to wait and take turns and blah blah blah, and because you have to keep that kind of in your head at the same time, it sort of frees you up to do other things. Now that if I can gain priority, I can do a whole number of things I would never be able to do before, right? And they might be effective now. That's great. So that's the kind of thing that's going on. Now we'll do the complaints here first. So with the priority, it's not so much the arming, but the priority. There are other systems that use its type of arming, where you have to either take it back 90 degrees, or that you have to have it in a particular style, either a draw cut, or they distinguish between that, as we did in the first part of our existence as well. This game is going on touches, so we're just worrying about touches. Now the complaints with it, yes, all of a sudden you can spin around. Now, this is, of course, if you're in a single combat with one other person in a duel-like situation, and you are close enough within range that they can get you within one measure, within one beat. It is inadvisable to spin around and turn your back to them. Yes, that's very, very true. There are some other contexts where you can spin around and do that stuff. When you're very, very close to them, spinning around against them can keep you safe because they can't hit you. And then when you're a long way away, you can feel free to spin around because they can't really do anything. Why you would do that far away, don't know. So that's the number one complaint, right? The priority, it sets up an unrealistic scenario where we have to defend against this. And yes, like I said, this is not a real fight. This is a game, right? This is a match. This is a test of skills, right? Just like any other rule set. We may be taking the form of the duel and all that, but when I was in France, we talked about this extensively, that this is not fencing, that this has to have its own unique flavor, that it has to be consistent with what we know Star Wars universe like we want to be able to do the things that you see people doing with lightsabers in movies and TV and stuff like that. And that stuff, you can't do that under normal conditions. Now, so that's the complaint. And the complaint is that if you do that, and you get into the habit of that, when the chips are down and you're not within that rule set, you may continue to follow those things and then leave yourself open and you know, lose a point or what have you. I don't think that is a case. I have used, I can't tell you how many rule sets and how many different martial arts and all of that stuff in years. I've gotten into lots of real fights, and at no time did I ever find it tempting or whatever to do something foolhardy in a real situation or in a situation where that type of stuff isn't expressly permitted. Meaning, I don't have any problem going from a priority-based rule set like ASL to a non-priority rule set like Duan Bing. We don't really have any problem with that. When we go to Duan Bing, we're like, oh, okay, we don't have to think about priority here. We can be a little bit more aggressive in what we're doing. We can think about a little bit more different type of strategies, and that's the thing, right? What occurs is that you get two different types of games that both are analogs of certain things, and they're both accentuating different types of skills, right? So our Duan Bing rule set is, you know, speed and timing and stuff like that. Counterattacks are a big part of that game. Since counterattacks are not a part of the ASL game, then, you know, we don't, you don't see them because of the priority, you know, all of that kind of thing. So you have different strategies to get in. If you know the other person, if you get priority, they know that you're coming at them and they have to defend. You have to figure out a way to get past their defense. They also have to figure out a way to figure out where you're attacking. Right, and you guys are forced to do that, right? You can't just forget about what the other person is doing and just try to make the hit, right? Or try to dodge and hit. So voids are a part, but you have to void and then you have to riposte, right? If you counterattack and void at the same time, then you run into problems. It's a different game, right? Now, we have found that using the priority, you start to use different sets of skills. More awareness, trickery becomes definitely a bigger part of the game, which is very, very fun. So feinting, changing the tempo and the rhythm of what's going on, because you're going back and forth, you can get into a bop, 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 bop. And if you get into one of those little scenarios where you're kind of going back and forth, and one of you just changes the tempo a little bit by taking a little bit of a longer time to get around to the other side, doing a spin in the middle of your phrase, all kinds of stuff to create a space in that exchange, in that phrase. Then you have, you know, you've got this. And this is a kind of fast-paced, dynamic type of thought process that we're kind of going through. Now, yes, granted, it does take a little bit of getting used to. You do have to be mindful of it, and that's kind of where we're getting with it. So that would be my answer to that complaint, as far as the priority goes. As far as other complaints I've heard people say that it encourages people to be more aggressive, but that's not really the case in the ASL rule set, because you have to arm to gain that priority, and that takes time. So yes, people start to get a little crazy with it sometimes when they're trying to arm, but more than likely they just don't arm enough, and they get called on it with the ref. So we haven't had too much of a problem with that. Now, our experiences with it. Instead of reacting to what people are, don't like about it, let me tell you what we do like about it. Because we've been using it here, obviously, for a while, for obvious reasons. It's sort of in-house. It's kind of what we do. But we have been finding it to be an extremely fun game. It's different. It makes it has a different dynamic, has a different feel. Matt and myself have done a lot of weapon combat with a lot of different weapons and a lot of different groups and a lot of different styles and origins and stuff like that. And there's nothing we've experienced that's quite like doing this. You can, as a martial artist, like as we're going and we're doing the fight and stuff, you can show off, you can goof off. You can, here I'm gonna do something kind of fun and kind of silly, and I might get a point out of it or something like that. And we've been finding that the exchanges go longer because we have this priority rule. Because of the arming, when you get two people who are very good and very experienced, these exchanges and phrases can go on for a very long time. Without a score happening, and it keeps us on our toes to try to keep these dynamic, and we don't just get into kind of like a tennis or ping pong scenario, right? So we've been finding all kinds of stuff like that. I'm from a Chinese background. We do all kinds of these forms that have lots of these abstract, large movements and stuff like that, and I'm now finding we have utility for them, actual uses for going around the head and all that stuff that aren't abstract, that don't have to be altered any. And we've been finding that it's great to keep us in the defensive headspace. Too often we get into just getting, I'm looking for my opening, and I'm going to try to hit my opening. And this allows you to stretch out that thought process, to say, well, I'm probably not going to get that opening the first shot, right? So now I have to think about, can I maneuver him to a point where I can create an opening that he can't get to, or that she can't get to, or that they can't get to? That's what I'm looking for, right? And now with these rules, there are different ways that you can go about doing that, and they become part of the game. So you have your regular, back and forth sword fighting experience, but now you have this added bonus of, well, now I can kind of do this. I don't have to worry about being counterattacked, and I don't have to worry about counterattacking. Once they start priority, I know, here's my phrase, this is where I'm going to start. Right? I'm gonna parry that strike. I'm gonna post to whatever area, and then see what happens from that point on. And yes, we do that with the other systems as well. When we spar, we try to be as meticulous as we can, but it is still very, very easy to slip right out of that mindset And that's usually how the sessions end, with people just playing whack-a-mole with each other. Not in the sense of necessarily just, being whack-a-mole, but just basically not worrying about defending themselves. You're starting to get more doubles, that kind of thing. So, whatever. But that's been kept to a minimum. We get very few doubles now. All of that. So that's what we have. So the priority rule has, once you get over the hump of its unfamiliarity, I urge people to start practicing or playing this game, and throwing in things that you never thought you would use in a match or a fight, right? And see how they work, right? Maybe you can use them. Like I said, it's difficult if you don't know, or you've not used to seeing people do, say, a butterfly kick, right? To know how is he going? He's jumping and his legs are going this way, and where is this weapon going to come from, right? That can, again, offer you enough time and space to slip in and get your touch. So that's my advice to people. Give it a chance. We gave it a chance. We ended up loving it. And you don't have to stop the other rule sets. You don't play as we play as many rule sets as you want. We try to learn all of them as much as we can. Any ones that come out publicly. Obviously, we're focused on our two kind of in-house ones now because we're developing those. But it's not like we're living in a vacuum. And remember, all rule sets are valid. What we're talking about here is just this particular type of rule. It's similar to what's in foil. It's more similar to what's in Cane de Combat, the French stick fighting, which is a very dynamic and exciting sport to watch. And that's what we're going for. Right? Get a little bit of the movie and the theatrical edge into the competition, into the actual fight. It's not only fun for the audience, I think, especially if you've got two fighters who are really putting it on the line, really being creative, and throwing in, cool moves here, there, and wherever, and all that. It's fun for the people doing it too. My own personal experience is, it's fun to be able to spin around and do these theatrical type attacks and all that kind of stuff. And it's fun to try to figure out how to mix and match arming principles and priority switches and all of that into your game of, like, how am I going to get this person to open up where I can get them. So, like I said, we've been having a really, really great time with it. And I think it's very important that the priority rule is there. So that's the thing I'll end on. Priority is definitely a essential part of this rule set. If you have the arming principle and you don't have the priority principle, you're not getting the same freedom that you would to do the cool, the cool lightsaber tricks and things. So the Arnold Classic Fencing tournament recently had a lightsaber tournament within it, and they kind of took the FFE rules and they kind of made their own version of them, which was a little disappointing. We would like people to give us a call. We'll get them all set up with the rules. We'll do demonstrations or whatever. If anybody wants any kind of demonstration for these rule sets, just give us a shout, and we'll make it happen. Obviously, after this whole thing blows over, but they took out the priority rule. So they had the arming principle, but they didn't have the priority rule, and so you still got a lot of simultaneous hits. You still got a lot of messy exchanges. The phrases weren't really that clear, and you didn't have a lot of people doing at least that I saw, like many of the really cool jumping attacks and you know, fun stuff. Granted, a lot of these people were fencers and had never done this before or what have you, but taking out the priority rule there is kind of detrimental to the game in that sense. Because again, the point of the game is not to necessarily recreate a real fight, but it is to create a Star Wars themed fight. And those moves and those kind of acrobatics and stuff like that are part of what we think of when we think of a lightsaber battle. So those are very important to keep in there. They're very important for the French as well. So anyway, I have been talking too long yet again, so I will leave it there. Some thoughts to ponder. That's my argument for a priority. It's really, really fun. Once you get used to it, it does take a little bit of adjustment, but I feel that that adjustment is actually beneficial to you, right? It allows you to keep the plasticity of your mind, right? And allow, or not keep the plasticity, but to help change the plasticity and, you know, change your mind and change the patterns that you usually operate on. Kind of lost that metaphor there. Anyway, I will leave you there. Stay safe, stay healthy, patience, practice, perseverance. Happy sabering.